I became a Christian at the age of 17, and I was instantly convinced about the need to tell people about Jesus. But it wasn't until later that I realized the magnitude of that task. I was a student nurse in Belfast working in the emergency department of a busy hospital not long after the Troubles. And as I was there, the red phone went off. Now, the red phone's a little bit like the bat phone. It only goes off when things go down. And as I picked up that phone and I put it to my ear, I heard someone on the other end telling me that there had been multiple bomb blasts in Belfast and we needed to be ready because bodies would start arriving in a couple of minutes. The nurses and the doctors just whipped into a disaster response mentality. Instantly, they had the tents outside, more beds were brought down, more staff was brought in, they pulled boxes out of nowhere with all of the right equipment that they needed to be able to deal with that problem. When the bodies started arriving at the door, they didn't just go and get to work, they actually sought out the people who were more able-bodied. If you had a broken arm but you could stand and then you could hold a compression bandage on someone else, they equipped them with a disaster response mentality so that they could look after other people, and that meant that they could triage and go to the places where the most need was. They called people fervently to the mission, they gave them the responsibility, and they equipped them for that task at hand, even though they were just brought into the hospital. Now, it turned out that it was just actually a training scenario. I just hadn't got the memo. But that event actually has convinced and shaped my conviction that what we need as churches and what we need as Christians is to have a disaster response mentality. When you read 2 Corinthians 5, and Paul tells us that all people will stand before God in judgment. For us, it's like standing at the opposite end of that red phone, hearing terrible, terrible news. He tells us that to whip us into action, to get us into a disaster response mentality. But he doesn't just leave us there, he actually takes us to the solution and reminds us that Christians, that the church has been given the message of reconciliation. And what we're to do is to get that message out there with a disaster response mentality so that we save as many people as possible. God used that story and many others to lead Catherine and I to the point where we would plant Established Church in Cronulla. When we saw that less than 2% of the 27,000 people here didn't go to church, were outside of Jesus, we just looked at that and we were broken. It was like picking up that red phone yet again. And our response was that we had to respond with a disaster response mentality. And we thought that the best way that we could do that with the gifts that God had given us was to plant a new church in Cronulla called Established Church. But that vision didn't become a reality until Mark and Emma Mitchell joined in September 2014.
Yeah, I joined back in September 2014 when it was known as Cronulla Church Plant. At the time, I was a part of a prayer group down the coast that was praying for a new church to start in Cronulla. I grew up in Cronulla, I've known Cronulla, I know how broken it is, and we wanted to see something new, something exciting start there. And then I was at church one afternoon after our gathering, and I had my friend Emma come up. She was telling me about how she's a part of this new church that's starting in Cronulla. And straight away I thought, that's something I want to be a part of, that's something I want to get into. I was looking into being trained as well to be involved in full-time ministry in the future, to do MTS, and I heard that the church plant was looking for someone to do MTS, so straight away I thought this is an opportunity, this is God opening doors. So I met up with Lee, heard the vision of the church, that we wanted to see hundreds of people establish life in Jesus. And straight away I knew it was something I wanted to be a part of, something that I knew that God would use to bring glory to His name.
When I first came to Established Church, we were meeting in the back of Lee's old place in Burraneer Bay in his pool house. It was just in the heat of summer. and we were all just sitting outside on lounges, really relaxed. We would sing songs together, we would pray together, then Lee would get up and preach for like an hour, which was great. And it was a really relaxed vibe, but at the same time, every single person who was there were around 10 to 15 of us at that time, every single person who was there because they wanted to see Jesus made known in Cronulla. So we were all different, very different people, very different personalities and backgrounds and walks of life, but we all met together every Sunday to challenge and encourage each other and push each other to see this vision of having Cronulla saved. And it was actually like family. It was really beautiful.
I joined Established Church in 2015, just a couple of months before the launch. I'm from Finland, so I was traveling. I heard like there was this team of like young, passionate Christians who wanted to be on mission in this place, and when I heard about that, I was just like, I want to come. I want to see what this thing is about, and so I went back home, and like 5 months later, I came and joined.
So God was preparing us for change since the early days of the church, back when we were doing house church and meeting at Lee's kind of backyard in the pool house. Like there was this one time we were just gathering, preparing, doing the setting up, and it just started raining all of a sudden. So we had to kind of halfway through singing songs and Lee preparing to preach, had to pack everything down, get it all from the backyard, take it inside, set it up in the living room / kitchen / veranda area. But yeah, it was kind of just God there teaching us that church isn't easy. It doesn't just always happen how we plan for it to happen. And he kind of has a sense of humor in making us run inside when it's raining. But the real milestone moment was when we had our vision night. It was a night where we got to have our friends and family and supporters come along. We had about 180 people praying for us regularly. But it was a moment where we kind of got to communicate our vision to everyone, and it really cemented that church planting, that was a thing that we were doing. It's gone from like a lofty idea, a bit of fun, to this is a real thing that's actually happening. People are on board, people are excited about it, they want to commit financially and prayerfully and get behind us by joining. And it was from there on that we grew to a team of about 27 running up to launch, and yeah, that's when we launched.
A public launch was awesome. We actually had to change venues at the last minute because we had so many people wanting to come and support this new church starting in Cronulla. We had around about 180 people join with us on that day. It was an awesome vibe, but what we wanted was for Jesus to be at the center. So we kicked off a series on Mark's Gospel called The Revolutionary Jesus, and the response to that on that day was just absolutely mind-blowing. We had 10 people go away saying that they needed to seriously check out Jesus, some of whom ended up becoming Christians and inviting other people to come back again, who in turn became Christian as well. That was an awesome start for the beginning of this new church in Cronulla. Post-launch, we had some new people join. We had people continuing to check out Jesus and people continuing just to check us out each week. We didn't grow quite as fast as what we had been praying for and quite as fast as what we had hoped, but that didn't mean that God was doing nothing at Established Church. In actual fact, what was happening at that time was that people were growing in their love and knowledge of Jesus through the Word. That they were growing in what it looked like to be on everyday mission together. In February, we had a number of pastoral challenges and some people decided to move on from Established Church. I ended up rupturing nearly every ligament in my knee playing soccer. But God was teaching us a number of significant things during that time. Mainly that He was the one who was building His church. People stepped up, they got mucked in, church continued, but I still needed to write and deliver our evangelistic course live. But the thing that really sealed the deal for us in knowing that God was in control was that in our weakness, God was using life to transform the lives of John and Cal Eyre.
I've grown a great deal. I know the Bible now better than I did before. I used to read the Bible, but I didn't really think deeply about it. Gospel Communities has helped me to frame my thoughts about what I read and how it fits into the context of God's Word. It helps me connect closer to God, and I think that comes out in establishes community and the church that we attend each week. It helps us to discuss with other people the Bible and the word that God has given us.
So I have grown heaps since coming here. Coming from like a background where, like a church background where I was not really even able to serve. I didn't really know anything about leading anything, or I was never a part of a team or anything. Coming here to this church plant, not knowing what a church plant even was, and being able to see everything, like the ups and downs of that, really up close, that's been a very big learning experience for me.
A highlight though had to have been the baptism service. I had never actually baptized anyone before, so we were all jumping in the deep end. We went to Green Hills Beach, but the only problem was the surf was pretty big that day and there was a really strong rip. And I can remember standing there holding on to Simone, who was being baptized, and just to make sure that we could even just stay still. And this massive wave came over both of our heads and she just looked at me and said, "Is it done yet?" And I'm like, "Nah." And then we had to wait until we had a break in the waves, and then it was the fastest baptism ever. Baptized in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Baptism done.
Just excited to see people growing in maturity. So we've seen that a lot already this year, with people becoming Christians and seeing the way that God has grown them from being from the kingdom of darkness into the kingdom of light, and they just want to be telling their friends and family about Jesus, and that's awesome. That's incredible to see. We've also seen people maturing in terms of stepping up to leadership positions and just taking on more responsibility. We've seen people maturing in terms of the way that they care for other people. So I just want to, I'm really, really excited to see what God does in people in the next year.
Excited that we're a church that plants churches, that from the very beginning we were talking about raising leaders up to send them out to plant new churches, because we believe that we best reach the unchurched by new churches. And I'm excited because I know and I hold into the promise that Jesus will build his church and that the gates of hell cannot prevail against it, and that we get to be a part of that mission here in Cronulla and as we look to the future in different towns, cities and suburbs.
Imagine a church that's continually seeing people establish life in Jesus. Imagine a church where people are in community around Jesus. A place where you can feel yourself and be at home, but yet be challenged to be more like Christ. Imagine a church that's on everyday mission. A church that's not comfortable with the number of bums that they have on the seat, but heartbroken by the number of people who are not, and goes after them relentlessly the way that God pursues us. A church that's captured by this vision to see people establish the life that they were made for. That's our vision at Established Church. It's a massive vision, but we have a massive God who longs to call people to himself, don't we? We just need to trust him and have a disaster response mentality. So over the next 18 months, we've committed our prayers, our plans, and our people to see this vision become more of a reality. To do that, we need your help. We need your continued support. We need you to continue to be part of the story of seeing hundreds of people establish life in Jesus.